All right, welcome to Silicon Valley Health Institute, formerly known as Smart Life Forum. I'm Robert Minkemeller. I'm one of your board of directors, been a nutritionist for about 24 years, and been coming to Smart Life Forum for about 18 years, and been on the board for about the last 3. So, a few things. Do we have any first-time visitors here? Yay. Well, welcome. Yep. Hopefully we'll have you back again and again. So we have great speakers every month. Our organization is a 501c3, so we run on memberships and your donations. It's $60 for a year, very reasonable, or $10 at the door. So thank you. Your donations help us to do what we do, so thank you very much for being here. Please silence your cell phones. And if you have any knowledge of EMFs, you might want to turn them off. If you must take an emergency call, please step out the door so you can respect our speakers and our audience as far as the talks go. And the location of the restrooms, we'll have a break for about 10 minutes between, 10 to 15 minutes in between speakers here. So the restrooms are down the hall this way and to the left, first left, about 100 yards down on the right side. So we usually start off with any announcements that people might have of anything that's coming up that's maybe of interest to our members. No announcements? Okay, Jerry.
FMBR does have a meeting tomorrow, Friday, and Ralph Meltzer will be speaking with regard to healing and consciousness. So, and that's at 7:30 at the Unity Church. FMBR.org is the website, and you'll find out all about the talk. Thanks.
They're like one of our sister organizations here, so.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm hosting a meetup, Bay Area forward-thinking parents of children with autism. It's every third Saturday in Redwood City from 4 till 6, and you find it under, meetup, Bay Area forward-thinking parents of children with autism. Thank you.
There's a movie called Vaxxed. It's about the cover-up about the vaccinations. And the movie is one of those on-demand venues where if enough people are interested and sign up, the movie will come to Palo Alto, I think December, I'm not sure, 2nd or 3rd. But you have to sign up, and we need to get enough people signing up and reserving seats, and then they will show the movie. So go to the website, vaxxed.movie.com, VAXXED.
VAXXED.com? Oh, vaxedmovie.com. Vaxthemovie.com. Okay.
I was able to see that movie in Santa Cruz, and it's very, very startling and worthwhile.
Good information for all of us to have, for sure. Okay, so we usually start the forum with questions from the audience. Any questions that you have? We have a few experts here that can possibly answer your questions. So, and one thing about questions, wait for the mic till I get it to you because it goes on the recording there. So we'll have a clear audio when we make the videos available for you.
As I'm getting older, I'm finding I'm losing my memory, which I think is pretty popular around here, but it's driving me so crazy because I read all these articles, and I'm wondering, does anybody in this group have a better recommendation than these things on the web?
Well, our guy that usually answers the questions written a book on that and has quite a bit of expertise, so.
But my information is all over the web, so I can't say it's better than my own information. I think one of the most powerful techniques that's available, if you don't have money to throw at the problem, you can always go out and spend lots of money hiring neuropsychologists to do very, very quantitative evaluations of your memory and just track it over time and to look to see what kind of lifestyle modifications or supplements or drugs or stopping drugs that would have a positive effect on your memory versus those that might have a negative effect, and just use that to make a decision. But the less expensive way is to monitor your mental function on your own with self-care technologies. And that could involve playing at-home games, computer games. If the game has a cascade failure kind of design to it, it gives you a very sharp indicator of how well your mind is doing. So for example, if the game gets faster and faster and faster with time, so eventually you're going to hit a wall and it's going to be faster than you can keep up with it. And every time you make a mistake, the game gets harder. So that, then all of a sudden when you hit that wall, the whole thing breaks down and you get a very hard data point. And so that will show you if your mind is improving or not. There are also, simple proprioception tests that you can do. The normal kind of drunk driving test where you touch your nose, and the idea is to stop your finger right in front of your nose and then look to see how far off you are, both in a normal position or with your head tilted and your shoulders tilted, so that you're putting a challenge on your body's sense of self and position. And to look to see how that changes with developments. If you're dealing with somebody with Alzheimer's disease, you can look at things like handwriting or verbalization. If you like doing crossword puzzles, you can do those every day and rank each day of the week to see whether your scores are trending up or down. If you play it like playing bridge, you can join a duplicate bridge club where you're playing against the same hands against a whole group of people to see whether or not there's an uptick or a downtick in terms of your ranking. There's all kinds of ways to monitor your cognitive performance at home, but the best one would be online games like Luminosity or Quantified Mind, quantified-mind.com. These outfits will give you dozens of games to choose from, and if you find one that you like, it's entertaining, but it's relatively hard for you to do, it'll give you very good data, and they track it over time. They remember how well you did. So all you have to do is get online and play the game all the time, and then look to see what lifestyle changes you've made and what happens to your memory, or your ability to do simple or complex decision-making tests, whatever it is that you're most interested in studying.
How about a couple of quick things as far as supplementation goes that you might recommend?
Cholinergic agents like choline, B5, phosphatidylcholine, lecithin are involved in the cholinergic nervous system that's involved in memory function and higher order cognitive issues. You could look at things that enhance blood flow to the brain, like nattokinase, or how about ginkgo biloba, and to see, or some kind of nitric oxide precursor, to see whether or not that causes an effect. So the problem with the brain is that it's dependent upon your heart, your blood flow, your lungs, oxygen, delivery, removal of CO2. All kinds of systems are necessary for your brain to function, and you might not know or be able to guess well about which one might be the one that's most compromised. So in other words, it's a trial and error process of trying each one of them until you find something that all of a sudden you get a step function improvement in your mind, and then you go, okay, now I've hit gold. And then you stabilize that, and then you start again, and you start looking at other things, so that once you take care of your primary bottleneck, you go to secondary bottlenecks, and then pretty soon you have a very, very sharp mind again.
I imagine tonight's subjects are going to add a lot for you also, but I will say for myself that I started taking a thyroid supplement some years ago, and although that's something that once you do, you are on forever, as I understand it, it has helped me a lot. I play tennis a lot more now, and that helps me be more alert, so just exercise, the old kind of regular thing. I've also done, I don't think it was called Lumosity at the time, I forget the earlier name, but the games that Steve is talking about, and I remember a particular time in there where I was one of the exercises is where you're listening to tones, and I would just sit there. I was so frustrated because I couldn't hear any difference in the tone, and it's telling me tell the difference between the tones, and then suddenly I could, and it was kind of the most amazing thing to me. So the brain responds to exercise just like everything else, not just as a way of telling you where you are, but the exercise of the brain will actually make it perform better. You might consider taking regular MCT oil supplements, maybe up to 4 tablespoons a day. I mix it in with bacon and eggs in the morning.
Hold on.
Can I ask you, I've done tests to see about the thyroid, and mine always comes back normal. Was yours normal or?
Fortunately, mine was not quite normal. I had a fairly high thyroid stimulating hormone, but the T4 and the T3 were correct. And it took a lot of insistence from me to convince the doctor to prescribe thyroid. And at one point it was just like, well, my hands are cold, my feet are cold. When I go to bed, it's hard to get my feet to warm up. And I just seem to feel abnormally cold. Let's try it. And fortunately, and I'm with Kaiser, and much as people, seem to tend to want to bash Kaiser, my experience with this particular doctor was good. And if you get a doctor that won't do that, then maybe you need to find a different doctor that will. Because you can have all these symptoms. And again, this is towards being hypometabolic, so you don't want to talk to your doctor and say, I'm hypothyroid, because that's a medical diagnosis. But if you talk to your doctor and you say, I'm cold all the time, or, I feel, I have all these symptoms, and then they can't deny your symptoms. They could deny your diagnosis, but they can't deny your symptoms. And Steve was actually a good coach for me in that regard, actually. I've known Steve for a number of years now. And so again, I mean, both the talks tonight are pretty relevant to what you're talking about also. So you're in the right place at the right time.
I was going to ask, did you do a reverse T3, T4 test or just a standard test? Okay. And what was your other comment?
No, that's, his symptoms are my symptoms. That's why I'm kind of forward.
Okay. All right.
So I'm a lot more cold tolerant now. And I'll also say I've never gotten my doctor to do a reverse T3. She almost denies that such a test exists. So I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got the prescription, and it helps a lot.
The problem with testing thyroid hormone function in your body with thyroid tests is kind of like trying to measure your grandfather's hearing. By just talking in a normal tone of voice, where you say, "Grandpa, please pass the salt," and he smiles at you and nods, but doesn't pass the salt. He can tell you're talking, but he's not getting the information. And measuring thyroid hormone in the blood is like measuring the loudness of your voice and going from your mouth to your grandfather's ears. So there's not only that issue of the loudness. No. Looking at thyroid hormone itself. But what you're not paying attention to when you measure thyroid hormone in the blood is what's happening at the receptor level. Thyroid hormone travels through the blood, goes to the cell, is absorbed by the cell surface, and that has an effect. The thyroid hormone then goes in and is absorbed by the nuclear surface. That upregulates protein synthesis. Without that upregulation of protein synthesis, you don't get a thyroid effect. It also goes to the mitochondria where it's absorbed and upregulates mitochondrial function. If that doesn't happen, you don't get the effect of thyroid. So the medical test of looking at how much thyroid is in your blood isn't measuring what's happening with those receptors. So if your tissues are deaf, which is in its full-blown disease called generalized resistance to thyroid hormone, but if your tissues are deaf and they're not full-blown resistance, it's just mild resistance, subclinical GRTH, then you're going to be, according to the test, perfectly normal, but in terms of function, you're going to be suboptimal. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems with medical tests for thyroid and how to, I suppose I can also address that question at the end if we have some Q&As about how you can psychologically approach doctors to try to get them to do something, or how to bypass the doctors, get your thyroid hormone from overseas, bring it in, do a study of yourself responsibly and safely, and then document that data, give it to your doctor. Now what is your doctor going to do? If all your thyroid symptoms, hypothyroid symptoms go away in response to taking thyroid hormone, and your depression eases, and you sleep better, and you're more physically active, you're better able to play tennis, you're scoring better on your luminosity tests, then how's the doctor supposed to say, no, you don't need thyroid hormone? Yeah, and if you're not willing to fire your doctor, or you're stuck with Kaiser or PAMF, you can always just continue to import thyroid hormone from overseas. It doesn't cost you any more to do that than it would be to buy it openly in the U.S.
Mention your self-working group.
Oh, yes. I also run a meetup group. But I charge for it because I really want people who are seriously interested in applying self-care technologies to bettering their health. I hold it on the third Sunday of every month in the afternoon, and in the winter it's from 1 to 4, so you get to drive home before it gets dark. And the idea is that people who want to make these kinds of improvements have a safe place to come and talk, where very bright people can bring their skills to bear on helping people resolve these kinds of issues. It's under Project Wellbeing. No. Project Wellbeing. Well, no, that's the website. But the meetup is meetup.com/Project Wellbeing. Yeah.
Some time ago, the New York Times had an article that mentioned there was not a measurable increase in cognitive ability from playing luminosity and mind games like that. I just wondered if you had a comment, or is it still useful to track your progress?
Yeah. If you don't have an intervention, you usually see that cognitive abilities slide very incrementally over time. So you lose about 1/3% of your metabolism every year. That's not easy to measure, just looking at the metabolic side of things. Looking at your brain function, it's equally difficult to measure. But if you're using those games to not judge how you're declining based on time, but you're using them to judge the efficacy of an intervention. So you take niacin. Do your scores go up? Do they change at all? You start exercising. You do aerobic exercise, you see, does there a change? You do strength training exercise, is there a change? You go off wheat, does it make a difference? Those kinds of lifestyle factors can be assessed with that kind of a tool. If you have a coagulopathy, back when I was 40 years old, I had a coagulopathy. So I couldn't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. It was that serious. But when I started taking nattokinase, which is an enzyme that breaks down soluble fibrin monomer, which is responsible for blood thickness, so my blood thinned out and was able to flow through my brain, all of a sudden, all my speaking, writing, and editing abilities returned in 48 hours. So that's easy to measure on a game, on a platform like Luminosity or Quantified Mind.
Just one more. Is it, there's another comment here, so, okay.
Just really quickly, I'm an EEG biofeedback provider and a neuropsychologist, and I have some new information about lumosity and posit science, and I do brain training with 70% of my patients anyway. Both lumosity and posit science don't have baseline tests that are actually normed neuropsychological tests. And there is an organization, it's fairly new, that has online, on the AARP website, a baseline test. It's been pared down from 30 minutes to 12 minutes. But all of the tasks that are lumosity and posit science-like are ones that have been developed specifically to address each of the factors on the test. So it's much more specific and probably better in terms of looking at the gains.
I'd like to make a comment. I just had a very interesting discussion with Raymond Domanium and Gilbert Ling, and Gilbert is not doing too well. But he's a brilliant scientist, one of the best in the field. And because of Gilbert Ling, the MRI was invented by Raymond Domanium back in the 1970s. And something very exciting is happening. I started talking with Raymond 2 years ago to do a study with him on a university, Florida A&M, on cancer. And then he started revealing some incredible results. And I talked to Ray Pete about it just recently, and he's amazed by what's going on. First of all, he discovered a new MRI, which is a phonar. It's called phonar, F-O-N-A-R. If you can get somebody to do a phonar, what it is basically an upright MRI. What happened is, when he developed the original MRI, Westinghouse, GE, and Siemens and Toshiba ended up being partners in his discovery and stole basically 90% of the technology, and he won it in court. So he developed a brand new MRI that is much more advanced, and he believes that every MRI should be upright, because you would now see the weight-bearing situation on the spinal cord and the brain as well. I've sent him about a half a dozen patients, and I'm going to tell you something amazing is happening. How I discovered this is when the NFL was involved with us in a concussion study. Jim McMahon was sent to Raymond Domanium, and Jim was one of the very first football players with the most severe dementia and concussion of any football player ever discovered. His article is on the paper, and you can review it. And Raymond discovered something very critical in the whole thing. When he developed the phonar and he developed a camera, he discovered the cerebral spinal fluid was the key mechanism for all concussion syndromes. And he discovered the spinal alignment was the key factor in reversing this condition. And now he's working with Dr. Scott Rosa out of New York. And Jim McMahon had 3 treatments, and completely recovered 100%. You can read his article. And so many other NFL players have the same thing. Recently, he also got involved in MS patients. 3 of the lesions on all MS patients are completely gone. The discovery of the cerebral spinal fluid, he says, is the key factor for all dementia, concussion syndromes, cerebral palsy, Lou Gehrig's disease, and he's now recording and doing the research on this, with also involved with Daniel Amen, who also discovered this results. And it's very exciting that he believes totally in the spinal adjustment. He believes medical doctors are not advanced enough in this area, and so he's seen results by having an atlas-only adjustment. I just sent a CEO of a major company whose wife had major problems. One treatment with Scott Rosa, 50 to 60% of the symptoms were gone. She needs 2 more. But this discovery of the cerebral spinal fluid is so crucial in most of the dementia cases, and he's documenting all the studies right now, and you can look at the MS cases that he's doing now. And another thing, when I spoke with Ray Pete about this, he also says that the thyroid is very important in the cerebral spinal fluid function. So now I have seen that with a lot of my patients that I've taken on without cost, and I've given them thyroid medication, all of them, through a physician friend of mine who's willing to work with me. All the symptoms are gone, pretty much like Steve says. You're going to sleep better, you're going to have more energy. But even these traumas from automobile accidents cause some of the things. One other thing, he's taken on 2 severe autism cases. Both of them have completely reversed their condition just by the cerebral spinal fluid.
Okay, thanks, Bernd. We got to move on to speakers.
Next time on December 15th, we're going to have a potluck, so I'll bring some victuals so we can spread some seasoned cheer. And we will have a panel of 3 people who have cured their own ailments, including multiple sclerosis and Lyme disease, and we'll see you then. And in January, we're going to have a discussion on I forget. Anyway.
It's on the website.